there, listeners. This is Nelson Dellis, four-time USA memory champion, memory expert, and host of your podcast here, The Mind Show. In this episode, we talk with Katie Kermode, who is a legend in the competitive memory field. Now, before we dive in, you may notice that there is no video this week. I'm actually traveling. This podcast is done from a hotel room in Park City, Utah, where it's nice and snowy, cold, and feels like Christmas. So happy Christmas to everyone out there. Happy holidays. And as a reminder, as usual, I encourage every listener to go to the Extreme Memory Challenge website and take the test. This is part of a research project that I support to help find a cure for cognitive diseases, mainly Alzheimer's disease. Just take the test. You go to extremememorychallenge.com. Very quick. Takes about 5-10 minutes. And if you could share that with your friends, we're trying to get 1 million people to take this test. And we need those big numbers in order for the whole research to be worth it. So without further ado, let's dive into the podcast with Katie, and I hope you enjoy it. It's a good one. Hello and welcome to another episode of The Mind Show with me, your host. My name is Nelson Dellis, memory champion, and we are here with another memory champion, Katie Kermode, who is one of the best top memory athletes currently. And thank you for being on the show. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, happy to be on the show.
Great. And so I wanted to start just kind of telling your story. What's your background? I mean, not a lot of people know who you are unless they're in the memory sports world like me. But who are you? Where are you from? What do you do?
Yeah, I'm from Manchester in the UK. Well, not originally, but this is where I live. And yeah, I got started in memory sports around about 2008. Although I found out about memory techniques when I was maybe 10 or 11 at school.
Okay.
Wasn't until I went to uni that I found out about memory competitions. So my first one was Ben Pridmore's friendly, or it was called the Cambridge Memory Championship back in 2008. And yeah, I've got 2 kids, so I've had a couple of sort of long breaks from memory sport, but it was last year's XMT that I sort of came back into it. It's all going well this year.
That's great. Yeah, you've had a really great year. A comeback, I guess, if you can call it that. Or you didn't really go anywhere. Just had some kids, right? So what do you do for a living, though? What's your main occupation?
I'm a freelance translator. It's mainly it's all written translation. So it's Dutch, French, and German into English.
Oh, wow.
So a few different languages there.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Just always
okay.
Interested in languages.
Yeah, and so you're fluent in those languages, yeah?
Yeah. I wouldn't say fluent, but yeah, reading them. I'm very fluent at that. So.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I guess you would have to be. Can you speak them fairly well though?
I wouldn't say I do. I would like to speak them better. So, like at championships, I always like to practice a little bit. Like at the XMT, I practiced. I tried to practice a bit of Dutch with Vessel, and I was practicing Spanish the other day with Javier. I just really enjoy languages, so I'd love to try speaking all sorts of different languages. Nice. If I had lots of time.
And so you said you love languages, but did that, when you first started studying them, whenever that was that just out of interest, or are your parents from a Dutch background, German background, anything, or it was just your own interest?
My dad used to actually translate Dutch as well, so I suppose that was where that came from. At school, we just did French and German.
Okay.
But I actually went to uni to do computer science instead, so I started out as a programmer, and basically because I loved languages so much, after a few years I just said, right, I'm just going to give this up and start out on my own and become a freelance translator. So that's what I did.
Interesting. So, I'm focusing on the language part, obviously, because one of your top things is words. One of the memory events, you're the best at it. But so would you say, your passion for languages, you're probably very good at it, just me knowing you. But do you think that comes from I guess the quick question is a natural gift, or is it just because you had such a passion for it that you immersed yourself so much and got good at it because you were obsessed with it, I guess?
It's hard to say, really. I guess because I've been exposed to so many different languages, it does help with words because, every word has so many different associations. Yeah, I guess the studying helps, or maybe it's because I'm good with words that I got interested in languages. I don't really know the answer to that one, but yeah, I've just always been really passionate about learning languages.
Okay. Yeah. So let's dive into that part. From what I gathered over the internet this past weekend at the European Championship, you just broke the world record for memorizing the most names in 15 minutes, which was 318. Is that right?
Sorry, that's words 318. Names was 200.
Yeah, and names with 200. Both amazing records. Congratulations, by the way. Those records have been sitting there for a while, especially the words one. So how did it feel to break that? I mean, I know we had talked about it a number of weeks ago. I saw you and you were kind of hoping to go for it. How did it feel when the attempt was going on?
It actually, it felt good. I went for 348 words. I've been thinking really carefully about how many I should go for, because that the scoring is so harsh that, make sure if I get any errors, then I can still be in with a chance of the record.
Yeah.
My best in training was 304. So, to get 318 was an all-time PB for me. But actually, I think there were 2 words I swapped at the last minute, and I really shouldn't have. So if I hadn't done that, it would have been 338.
Wow.
So yeah, it just felt really good at the time, and it was a nice bonus because I wasn't really expecting or any pressure on myself. It was just a really nice bonus to get that. I was really happy about it.
Yeah, that's amazing. So 318. Yeah. So for those who don't know, the way it's scored is there's a certain amount of words. You get 15 minutes, and everything's in rows of 20. So during recall, you have to remember each row. If you get one word wrong in a row, it's half, so you get 10 points, even though you may have 19 correct in that row. And then if you get more than one, that row is 0. So you can remember a lot of words and make just a mistake here or there, and that can cut down a lot of your points, which is what you're saying. You could have had 338. Yeah. That's insane. So what's your technique for those out there? I'm sure they're wondering, because some people who are in a lot of people actually who compete in memory competitions, they're really good at the numbers, cards, things that you can develop a system for, and you know what you're going to get, right? You're going to get digits between 0 and 9 for numbers, and 52 cards. They're always there, albeit they're shuffled. But with words, there's thousands and thousands of words that could possibly show up in whatever order. So how do you approach it? What do you do?
Okay, so I basically put 4 words in each location, which is a little bit unusual because I think most people do 2 or maybe 3. Mm-hmm. And really, the first time I read them, it's really just reading, and if there's anything that's visualize it in that location. But I don't try really hard to make images for the abstract words. I just sort of read them and carry on. And then when I read it again, I try to really focus on the difficult words and sort of let it change the meaning of the concrete words somehow. So for example, if you've got an adjective, then I apply it to the thing that's in the location rather than make a separate image. So it all becomes like one big story, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay. Something else that I do, which I don't know of anyone else who does this. I have a fixed person in each location. I also do this in numbers and cards as well. So the story never happens just on its own. It's always attached to a person. It's always the same person in a specific location. So, like Ben Primmore's always on my driveway, and a family member is always in the hallway, and then my husband's in the dining room. So yeah, the story always gets attached to a certain person. I think that really, really helps me.
Yeah. Okay. I think I'm also in the bathroom. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, you're in my bathroom.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, I mean, she's mentioning location. She's talking about a memory palace. So you use a familiar journey through a place that you know. And what we're talking about here is maybe, for example, is her house. But what she's saying she does different is she'll have at each location, on top of the things she's memorizing there, a person, which I think that's an awesome idea, just because it probably gives so much more context to the random words, right? You can,
Yeah,
and you have the location. It just makes it probably that much stronger, right?
that's right. So like if I see a word like impatient, then it's not like I have to just come up with a random image for the word impatient.
Yeah.
I just imagine that that particular person is being impatient, and that's so much easier for me to remember.
Yeah. All right. So imagine let's just choose one of your memory palaces. Let's say you have one for your house. I'm guessing.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. The entryway, the front door. Who's there?
Well, the driveway is Ben, and then my nephew, whose name is Sammy, he's in the hallway.
Okay. Let's do Ben because we've had him on the show. People know what he looks like. So he's in your driveway. So imagine the words that you had to list. I'm going to say 4 random words, and just kind of talk me through what you would visualize. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Okay, so it would be change, house, football, and liberty.
Liberty. Okay.
So you group them in the 4 together, right? So this is maybe a
Yeah.
cluster you might have. You're in your memory palace at the driveway, and you got to come up with a picture for those 4.
Okay, so for house, I'd probably imagine a small house. So I'd imagine that Ben was switching around various sort of dolls' houses, like really small houses.
Okay.
And maybe he puts a football in one house and the Statue of Liberty in the next house, and he's just sort of changing them around, moving them around on a table or something.
Okay. So in that case, because I house and football are very concrete, change is more, it's more abstract, and same with liberty. But I guess if something pops out like Statue of Liberty, that's a very concrete image. You would use that, yeah. And then
I try to do that as much as possible, yeah.
And then change is a very action kind of thing, so you can apply that easily. Okay, very cool. And then so my issue, I guess, would be with 4 words, and what you just did is, so you have Ben there changing up this house that has a football in it and Statue of Liberty. It's very visual, but I feel like I'd make mistakes on extracting the 4 words from that scene afterwards, But maybe that just takes practice. I don't know.
Yeah, I think the thing that's more common for me is to have a complete blank of the whole location.
Yeah.
Once I get one word, the 4 words tend to all come back. So, one thing I do struggle with is getting words the wrong way around. I mean, this is what happened in my attempt on Sunday, was that I had these 2 words the wrong way around, and there were 2 others that I wasn't sure about. So if it hadn't been for those 2 pairs, I've got 3, 4, 8. So I really need to practice, being really, really confident of which order the items are in. But yeah, having 4 in one location isn't really a problem for me.
Yeah. And then so how many, for this attempt for the world record, how many locations did you need?
Oh, bit of mental maths here.
How many different journeys did you use? Or did you have to use?
It's all basically one journey. So what I do is each column of 20 words is one section of a house. So it'll be either an upstairs or a downstairs, or if it's a small house, it's the whole house. So I lived in quite a lot of houses throughout my life. So it just goes backwards from the present day to the house I lived in when I was 16, basically. That's the one I got to at the end. So yeah, each of the 4 words is in a separate room, and then so I think of 5 different rooms in each part of the house.
And then so I mean, if you're training also, you must have a lot all set up. I'm guessing you have some specifically for words, some specifically for cards, or do you mix them all together?
I have a separate journey for each discipline. So with words in my head, and I also used to use that for abstract images, because the 2 types of data are totally different, so there's no chance of getting confused. But yeah, cards has its own journey, and binary and numbers. So yeah, I know never really mixed them up.
Okay, very interesting. And then let's talk about names, right? So you're also one of
Okay.
the top memorizers of names, and you just, as you told us before, broke the record for international names. At least that's probably the hardest because you have a combination of Chinese names and Indian names, American names, German names. For first and last names, it's just very worldly, which makes it challenging. The names are pretty long, but you did 200 in 15 minutes, which is awesome. Nobody's broken the 200 name barrier ever. So, what's your technique there? I mean, are you using much of a technique, or are you just naturally good at names?
I don't consciously use any technique. It
That's
may
what I
be
thought. Yeah.
that if it's a very difficult name, then I'll come up with something that it sounds like. But other than that, I just read the name and think about where that person might come from. Just get a feel for the name, really.
Katie, that's not fair, okay? But that's very incredible. Yeah, I mean, for us mortals, we have to come up with a picture and this kind of elaborate image creation. But that's incredible that you don't need to do much of that. So I've heard around from other memory athletes that you, and this probably helps with things like names and memorizing words, but that you have synesthesia. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's something that, I wouldn't have really noticed until talking to, for instance, Yanja, who has the same thing, and she's also very good at names. And I think it helps us both in the same way that every sort of word or name is associated with maybe a color or a texture or some sort of picture. I wouldn't say it's really, really strong and obvious. It's just like a subtle like image that's there in the background. I think it really does help.
Yeah.
And it means I don't get names mixed up because they might have completely different textures or colors.
What's an example? Something? Can you give us an example?
Okay, like the name Cedric, which turns up occasionally in memory league names. That name sort of tastes like vinegar to me.
Okay.
So it's not my favourite name. Or the name Pamela reminds me of like it's very sugary. It's hard to explain.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, each name has its own distinct kind of feel.
Interesting. What does Nelson do? Anything?
It's kind of blue and orange, and yeah, it's like it's sort of some water on metal, and it's blue and orange.
Interesting. Okay, that's interesting. I'm going to ask you what that feels like when you've probably forgotten it, and hopefully you say the same thing.
If I say the same answer, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see. That's great. So you broke these two records at this European Championship last weekend. What did you end up in terms of your placing? Were you third?
Yeah, that's right. Behind Alex and Simone Reinhard. Yeah, I was really pleased with that because, I knew I wasn't up to anywhere near Simon's level. Marlo and I had a bit of a friendly rivalry, trying to keep up with each other. And yeah, I was really, really happy to get third, and I was very happy with my points total.
Yeah, what was your final total points there?
I think it was 6,216. So
Nice.
enough to get me up to 17th in the world, which is really, really nice.
Yeah.
I was very keen to get into the top 20. So yeah, I was happy with that.
Nice. Congratulations. Yeah, that's a top score.
Thank
And
you.
what are your plans next for competing? Are you going to go to Singapore? There's the World Championships there. Or are you done for 2016?
Yeah, that's me done for this year, but I'm hoping to go to as many as I can next year. So if there's an World Championship, I'll definitely be there. And definitely if there's championships in the UK, then I'll be going. Yeah.
Very cool. And so for people out there who aren't, they're just getting into memory sports and memory training, what are some pieces of advice that you could give? I mean, based on what do you do for training? Are you spending hours a day doing this? You probably can. You're a working lady and you have children. You probably have very limited time. So what's your training schedule like? And what do you recommend for someone who's starting out?
I personally you can't have much of a schedule. Say my kids are doing something quiet for a minute, or they've gone to a friend's house or something. It's not something I can plan. I'm going to spend an hour a day or anything like that. But even I think if somebody's starting out, half an hour a day is it is enough to really make good progress, and try a little bit of each sort of discipline every day. A bit of cards, a bit of numbers. That's what I would do. Try and cover everything every day if possible.
Another thing I'd love to talk about, just because it's been very impressive, at least to me, how quickly you've gotten good at this, is your cards and your numbers. From what I had never really met you until before XMT, but from what I knew about you was you were the best at words and names and not really much else, which was like the kind of, okay, great, has weaknesses, that's good. But it seems like you've trained a lot and kind of tweaked your methods for some of the other more formal events like cards and numbers that require a system. Right. So what are you using? I know we talked about this, but to share with the listeners, what are you using now for cards and numbers versus what you were doing before?
Okay, so before I had a 3-digit system and a 2-card system, but that was completely based on categories. And I had that system for, at least for the numbers, for about 8 years. Mm-hmm. And I just wasn't getting very fast at it. Okay. And about a year ago, I started using the system to make everything into syllables. So each 3-digit number would be pronounced as a syllable. But because I was using categories, the word that I was making with the syllable wouldn't correspond with the actual image, which sounds crazy now that I tell you, but that's what I was trying to do. Okay. Now I'm thinking, well, no wonder I wasn't getting very fast. Yeah. So I'll try and explain what I've got now. So the first and last digit of the 3 is a consonant with the major system, and the digit in the middle is a vowel. So like So 137 would be tick. So I imagine a big green tick. Okay. And cards is basically the same idea, but the 2 values of the cards, that would be the 2 consonants, and the combination of the suits. So there's 8 different possibilities because I'm using only the black first combinations. I'll explain that in a minute, but so there's 8 different suit combinations, 8 different vowels, and it's the same as the numbers. It just makes one syllable. And the idea with only using the black first pairs is something that Johannes Mallow created, I think, and also Alex Mullen uses this. So it must be a good idea. Is that instead of having 2,704 images, you have only 1,352. And you have, in each locus, you memorize until you get to a black first pair. So if it's a red first pair, I use the same image as I would do if it was black first, and then stop when I get to a black first pair. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It makes perfect sense to me. But that's super clever. I mean, especially simpling the numbers and the card suits, or the combinations down to a single syllable word, which is turning the cards into something that you're unstoppable at, which makes it that much more scary for the other competitors. That's incredible. So what's your best card time in practice right now?
In practice, it's 21.14 seconds.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's close.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought I'd get to these sort of times. It's really crazy. Before I changed my system, my best was 36 seconds, and that it took me so long to get to that point, and that was just a complete one-off. So, after changing my system, I broke the 30-second barrier within 2 weeks. I mean, this is definitely the system I'm going to continue using because it's I've made so much progress, and hopefully I can carry on because it would be so amazing to break 20 seconds. It still seems impossible. And this weekend in the competition, I couldn't even get anywhere near that. I mean, it's totally different when you're sitting there in the real thing, but
yeah, sure.
In practice, it's going well.
And I know you hit 21,
Yeah.
but have you hit sub 20, sub 20, I mean, sub 30, sub 25 multiple times, or?
Yeah. I mean, generally sub 30, yeah.
Okay, nice. So when you practice, you typically expect to get 20 to 30 seconds somewhere?
Yeah, that's right.
Nice. And what about numbers? I guess a good measure would like 5 minutes. Do you practice that one anymore, or?
Yeah, I've recently broken the 300 barrier for the first time.
Nice.
Couldn't quite do it at the competition this weekend, but I got 320 in practice. So I just want to keep going now and try and maybe get 400 one day.
So that leads me to the next question. Like, what are your goals now? I mean, you obviously love to compete in memory sports, and you're getting better, and you love that. But is there something that's on like your bucket list? Is it getting that 400 digit in competition, or is it under 20 seconds in competition? Is it a championship win? What would you like to do?
What I wanted to do since I started is just to be world champion, but it's that's obviously a very distant dream. Yeah, definitely breaking 20 seconds in cards would be great, because that was just something I never ever dreamed of. When I started memory sports, I think the speed card record was maybe 35.
Yeah.
So when I got interested in reading about it. So yeah, it seems unreal, and it would be great to break 20 seconds.
Yeah, that's a good goal. I would love to be somewhat close to that. Once again, I've never gotten that close, but I was around the 30-second mark pretty consistently, but I've kind of lost that speed. I would love to get faster. It's. I hope that comes back one day. One question I had for you, being a woman, I get this question all the time. Why are there less women in memory competitions than men? And I say I don't know. I usually say because women know that they have a good memory already. They don't need to prove it. But do you have any idea? Because it's, the top is pretty crowded with men. I mean, it's you, Nyanja, Melanie from Germany is coming up as well. There's some Chinese competitors as well, but most of it is men. Why? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm not sure I know the answer. I mean, whenever I talk about memory sports to my friends, the men are always much more interested in hearing about it. I don't know why that is. I think some of the women just say, "Oh, isn't that a bit geeky?" It doesn't have the same appeal. Whereas the men are like, "Wow, that sounds really cool. I'd love to learn these systems." And I don't know why that should be the way it is, but it should be great if more women would would enter competitions and give it a go.
Do you do any memory training, like on the side, like business-wise, or no?
I've given the odd lesson, but that's about it. It's not something I've really got into. I guess I don't have much time. I work and the kids, so and memory training, obviously, my own training. So yeah, it might be something I do in the future, but at the moment I just want to train as much as possible, and I'm just having so much fun with it, and I just love going to the competitions, meeting all the people, and it's such a lovely community of athletes.
Yeah.
That it's just the best thing to do. It's so much fun.
And what's something? I mean, I didn't know that you were so talented with languages. I mean, it makes sense. But what else is something about you that doesn't have to do with memory at all that people may not know?
I'm a big football fan. You may not know that.
Yeah, that's right. What's your team again? Is it?
My team's Crew Alexandra. It's a very small team. My husband supports Liverpool, so yeah, we love watching them, and we go to as many matches as we can. And we take my little boy, who he's 7, and he loves watching it as well. So yeah, that's fun.
That's funny. I wouldn't have pegged you as a football fanatic. Are you crazy about it? Like you'll like shout at the TV and go to matches and stuff, and
yeah.
That's awesome. I would love to see
Pretty
that.
much, yeah. That's my voice, yeah.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing some of that. I hope the listeners that inspired some of them. I'm sure, a lot of people, like I said before, really want to know how to do words, names, and how, to train different ways to get faster. And you're the perfect example for that. So thank you for that. I look forward to seeing you at some competition next year. You totally you destroyed me at the Memory League Championships last month. So hopefully I can try to get some revenge at some point. But thank you, Katie. Good to hear from you. I'll see you soon.
Great. Thank you for having me on the show. Good to talk to you.
No problem. Bye, Katie.
Bye.